Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this employment panel, September, and thank you all for turning out on this very wet and rainy evening. Just a couple of things. Can we please make sure our phones are off or on silent? And to remember that when you need to talk, you need to press the middle button and it will turn green, and to make sure you turn it off when you've finished, because then that will enable everybody on the live streaming to hear you. Okay. And if the fire alarm goes off, which we're not expecting it to, then we will all follow Tony. Okay. Right. First thing, apologies, Tony.
Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Keane.
Okay, thank you. The next one is the minutes to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 21st of June. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Just a correction on something that I said at the last meeting, which is that I was commenting more generally. Was on the piece in response to Councillor West, where it says Councillor Hassel commented that pay had previously been number 6 on employees' list of employment priorities, but this may have changed. I was making a more general point than that. I wasn't talking specifically about HDC. I was just saying in the majority of surveys, if you ask people, where does pay fall, it falls number 6 in people's priorities. But obviously that changes by individual to individual.
So it is amendment change by individual.
It was a general response on surveys that look at staff priorities.
Change the wording.
Yes. I'd say in generally in staff consultations, pay falls number 6 on employees' list of priorities. On staff priorities, but this obviously varies by individual.
So we delete sentence comment of the pay previously been 6 on employees list of employment priorities is not changed to be.
Pay fell number 6 on staff priorities, but this varies by individual. Yes, okay. Is that agreed by the rest of the members? To make this the council must know what he was intending to say.
Everybody in agreement with that change? Yeah.
So that will appear in the minutes of this meeting rather than amend the previous one. Thank you. So if you want to sign those.
Do members have any interests? No? Okay, good. Then we move on to the number 3, the workforce information report. And I believe that's key. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm bringing to you this evening the Workforce Information Report for Quarter 1, which is the 1st of April 2023 to the 30th of June 2023. Looking at headcount at the end of Quarter 1, our headcount was 627 with a full-time equivalent of 570 people. This is higher than at the end of our previous quarter. With regards to the pay bill, the forecasted spend on all pay costs for his employees is currently estimated to about £98,000 lower than in budget. In contrast to this, there is an estimated overspend of £670,000 on contractors and agency staff against an expected budget. In total, it nets out an overspend of around £300,000 against a staffing budget. Whilst we're still higher than contractor spend than budgeted, this is related to roles that are brought in for specialist skills and that do not need to recruit on a permanent basis. As talked about at the last meeting, things for projects with one-off funding. The contractor spend is constantly monitored by managers and SLT to ensure it's kept at its lowest level as possible. Thank you. Leavers, there were 23 employees that left the council. Sorry. Apologies, I'll speak louder. Apologies. So we had 23 employees leave the council in Q1. This was lower than the last quarter where there were 26. The percentage turnover for the last 12 months has reduced to 14.8%, which is lower than last quarter and continues our trend of turnover reducing and is now below the LGA and national benchmarking figures. From looking at the data, it can be seen the top reasons for leaving are pay and job change, which has been consistent across the previous quarters. The factors that we've discussed in previous meetings are still valid, with the top reason being pay, which is reflective of the current economic climate. Within the quarter, we had 3 retirements with a combined service of 71 years.
Yes, and can we put on record, please, our thanks for the time that they spent working for HDC? Thank you.
Recruitment obviously continues to be an area of focus within HR, although the numbers did decrease in the last quarter. The recruitment market is changing at the moment. We still see the number of externally jobs are now starting to shrink and unemployment is rising. However, in difficult to fill roles within HDC, we are still seeing some failed recruitment campaigns with little interest in some vacancies. In the most recent quarter, the most difficult to recruit areas have been finance and ICT. We are still continuing to work to make us more attractive, enhancing our recruitment pages, adding staff voice stories, and showing careers pathways available in HDC. As I've mentioned, we've also been going out into the local community to try and support people into roles and looking at apprenticeships where possible. Within engagement, we have launched our Level 5 and Level 7 Leadership and Management Programme. This follows on from the Level 3 cohort that we launched in October last year, who are due to finish shortly. And we've seen good levels of interest in both levels, of course, and the Level 5 actually starts in October. We've had 4 new apprenticeships start, which is 2 internal colleagues who are enhancing their skills and 2 external joiners to us who are coming into HDC to learn their skills with us. And we have a good variety of courses being taken across a variety of different services. In the last few meetings, I've spoken a lot about the workforce strategy, and in recent weeks we have recruited Nicola Harpham, who's joined us this evening, and she will be leading the project of the workforce strategy forward. And going forward, she will report updates to the committee around what has been happening in the previous quarter around engagement with the surveys and focus groups with employees. Nick is also working with the representative groups to ensure collaborative working. So, in terms of sickness, the annual average sickness has decreased to 7.9 days per FTE, and the number of days sickness has decreased from the last quarter from 1,100 to just over 1,000 days. Short-term sickness has decreased to 411 days in the period, which is expected in the summer months. Long-term sickness does continue to be high and has increased by over 200 days in the quarter, which is impacting the figures. The top reasons for sickness in the quarter was sickness, anxiety and depression. The total days lost does continue to decrease and are at their lowest level since Q1 21-22, and this which have been recorded during COVID times. As a note, externally, long-term sickness is being reported as the highest it has ever been, with a national trend where the ONS figures show that currently 2.6 million people are out of work due to sickness. The sickness stats are also reflective of the HR caseload. This has increased in the last quarter. This has been driven by the number of absence cases that have come to a conclusion and also higher than usual disciplinary cases, with the disciplinary cases being a variety of issues in a variety of services. At previous committees, we were asked to include health and safety information in the report. We've added this back in for this quarter, and we will give further feedback in future quarters as the data builds up. But to note, there have been no RIDDOR reportable accidents in this quarter. So, in conclusion, all the factors from this report will help to inform our workforce strategy, which Nick will be working on. Will be evidence-based as well as gathering feedback from our colleagues. Alongside this, the HR team will continue to support our managers in managing sickness and recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, for that. Councillors, have we any questions? Councillor.
Well, I'm sorry to labour the point, but it's what we discussed earlier when Councillor Hassel asked for a change. The point I'm thinking is that it becomes more and more evident. We ask a question, this panel did, before this present change. We talked about was our wages in line with other councils? Were we able to recruit? And we were given the impression that yes, we still were. But now it seems to me that pay is becoming more of a reason why people are leaving this organisation. And I think if that is a trend, I think we should pick up on it now. It may be, I accept what Councillor Hassel says about his surveys, but frankly, it does seem to me a real problem if we are losing staff because of pay, which will mean that we will not be able to recruit the quality of people that we want to deliver the services we want. And I think that's the point that we should try to find out as this panel.
Nikki, do you think that is a trend that you see for people reasons for leaving? And I know there's still a problem in planning, and there are a shortage of planners.
Pay is a challenge. It's a national challenge with cost of living. So some roles that we do have challenges around the pay levels, but we can benchmark across other councils, other organisations. But I think in those hard to fill roles such as planning, they attract a premium, which is something we would have to consider.
Frankly, the problem is, Chairman, that we are capped when we should not be. National government should keep the nose out. They should give us roles and responsibilities. We should not be capped. They're not capped. They ought to be, but they're not. And so therefore, we do need the resource to make certain that we can get the right people into the organisation. And if they want, and we heard Grove stand in Parliament talking about Birmingham and saying about giving expression about efficiencies and one thing and another about local government. They've got a responsibility. So in national government, it's about time they stood up to their responsibility. The cap went, and we are able to put in the resource that we need to ensure that we get the right people to give the services that our public deserve. And I think that's something which we should continue to bang on about. If we are losing good people and we're not recruiting good people, then this is, at the end of the day, this is going to be a plague on all our houses. So I think that's something which I feel very strongly about. And I think we should. Pete Oliver's not here, really. Thank you.
Martin. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to respond to that a little bit, I think this is a situation that went back to well, I've got figures going back to 2013, and I'll take your point on the cap, and I think absolutely, yeah, we've effectively had a managed decline of public services because we can't raise up to the cap. I would highlight, though, that a number of years under the previous administration, the previous administration didn't increase council tax to the cap. And I know, we've had numerous discussions in terms of how the finances are managed, and at full council that something always comes along, and that always there is a method of balancing the books. But if you look back at the pay rises since 2013, so 2013-14 a 2% pay rise, 2014 to 15 no pay award, 2015 to 16 1% pay award, 2016 to 17 1% pay award, 2017 to 18 1% pay award, 2018 to 19 1% pay award, 2019 to 20 1% pay award, 2021 2% pay award, 21-22 2% pay award, and even 22-23 it was 2%, and has just now increased to 4%. And as you know, we're still in discussion with staff for 2023-24. But in essence, I think what disappointed me is that I take your point fully, that we should not have the cap. But even when the cap was in place, the previous administration didn't raise council tax to it. And in order to balance the books, clearly from these figures, you can see that staff salary was used to balance the books. And my challenge really, or my question is, I wasn't on this committee at that time, did this committee raise that issue then, during all those years where none of these salary rises was with inflation? So no wonder we've got issues from staff, and all the situations you describe, where we are struggling to hire staff competitively, and where people's morale is lower than it should be. So interested to see your thoughts on that.
Well, certainly, Chairman. My thoughts on that is, I think the officer, did you say that in certain areas we're still benchmarking, are still comparative to other councils? Is that what you said? Except for planning. Is that correct, what I'm just saying?
I said we could benchmark the salaries. I couldn't tell you exactly how we are comparing to other councils at this moment.
Now, first of all, let's just have a look at the situation. One, we're here to serve residents. Now, first of all, you get your council tax, 2% for social care, police, combined authority. You go through all the people that want all the money. And we felt that we should try to be as efficient as we could, be as efficient as we could, and we would keep down the bill for the resident. That I stand firmly on. Using hindsight, yes, probably we should have gone right to the limits. Maybe we should have done that. But the point is, I know how you feel, but surely I went to a meeting where the officer said, there's no money trees. The authority haven't got a money tree. And I said, no, officer, nor have the residents got money trees either. They haven't got money trees either. They're struggling. And this struggle hasn't come just over the last few months. Now, I feel with all the other increases that were going on, we were justified to try to be as efficient as we could. Now, regarding a comment which has been misused by your side, the Joint Allowance, regarding Councillor Gray, I went to a webinar. It was chaired by Sir Robert Buckland, who said quite clearly that if you're having problems in making the resource able to fit the job that you're given, we will give you an increase. Now, that comment's been taken out of context completely. That, oh, don't worry, something will come along. No, it came from a webinar which Sir Robert Buckland actually chaired, that said that we, the Conservative government, if you had problems with resource, we would support you. Now, if I'm correct, I think you had about £6 million from the government, not recently. Is that correct or not? You had quite a sizable amount of money from the government that you didn't expect. Councillor Mickleborough talked about it at the council, that we've had this amount of money. So I think that should be considered as well. But as I say, I come back to the basic point, Chairman. You were there when we had our discussions, we had our budget discussions, led by Jonathan Gray, and we came to a decision that we wanted to be as reasonable and as efficient as we could. Also, national government said that, hang on a second, you've got X number amount of money in your reserves. Use some of your reserves. That was a government minister that said that in Parliament. That is on the record. You've got enough in your reserves, start using some of your reserves. So therefore, I think I can understand you selecting the position we find ourselves in. I can understand that, but you need to be there at the time and take it from 2000 and 10, which you're quoting, take it forward, and you can see the reason why we did what we did. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor West. I think you make a spirited defence in terms of, obviously managing the budget. I think Councillor Hassel has also made a spirited defence in saying over the years we have not invested properly in our staff, and we are actually trying to actually address those issues. One of the questions, and you preempted it, was obviously benchmarking. One of my questions was going to be is where do we sit in terms of regional or in other local authorities in terms of our salary grades? And the other point I wanted to pick up with you was how are things going with that South Cams with the 4-day a week? Is that having any impact? Are staff moving to other councils? That's one of the things I would like to address.
So I think with regard to the benchmarking and pay scales, most other local councils are on national joint committee scales. So that's one scale across all of them. And I can benchmark the figure for you for the next meeting. With regards to South Cams, we have seen colleagues move there, but we've also seen transitions this way as well. So I think it's moving around as the trial continues.
Sorry. Thank you for that, because I think obviously with the national salary increases, obviously there's been a disconnect in terms of what's happening nationally and where we are, and it would be incredibly useful to know how far we have drifted, if any, from that national average in actually addressing those issues. So thank you. We look forward to getting that information. Thank you.
So that's an action to come out, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, thank you, Nikki, for a good report that's easy to read. Appreciate that. For me, there were some sort of grim reads in there that one in 7 employees left the council last year, which is, for me, is rather alarming. But all the reasons that involves. So I was in line with Councillor Gledo asking for, some more comprehensive data to see how this council fares against other councils with their leavers, reasons for leaving, etc. And moving on, the sickness figure continues to stand out. I know aspirationally, I think the Cabinet are looking for sort of a reduction to 6 days by the end of March, but as we're at 7.9 heading into winter, I think that's highly unlikely. And again, can we have some more detailed data? I think there's been a lot of sort of reasons given that this is the way local authorities work, but it's a high level, and we need to reduce. So again, can we have some sort of more detailed data to review and compare as we try to reduce this? Thank you.
Councillor Crawley, sorry I missed you before. I apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take it personally, honestly. I wanted to pick up on a few things. The health and safety stats, so good to see them, and thank you for including them, and look forward to how that progresses and we see that. I'd be interested to know if there's any proposal around setting some sort of KPIs around health and safety, but I guess I don't know how much data is there yet in terms of whether that's feasible or not. And obviously the link to sickness would be, we can start seeing that, which would be really useful to see. I was just about to actually congratulate HR on the fact that we're down to 7.9 days, yet still not great. But I've sat in this committee many years ago when it looked a heck of a lot worse than 7.9. So I think, and while we still have aspirations to improve that, of course, I think you should be congratulated. And I know it takes a lot of work from an HR perspective to follow those cases up, check all those things up. So well done and thank you to get it to that level and to start getting into the right space is not easy. I think, as Councillor Blackwell said, obviously as we approach winter, the challenge begins, and I know you don't underestimate that. That was really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to double check as well on the pay budget against the forecast, and I've not written down what page it's on. I'm sorry. If someone can remind me. Page 14, is it? Thank you, Chair. Pay bill. It's not page 14 of mine. Anyway, my question was, and somebody can tell me, so the pay budget versus the forecast, I presume that doesn't take into account any of the pay discussions that are ongoing, and that I assume they will impact next year's budget, but I'd like to understand if any of them have been taken into consideration, given that's an ongoing and live discussion, I understand, with the unions and obviously with the wider employee base.
So, directly responding to your question on the do the forecasts include any of the pay discussions? Obviously, the pay discussions are live at the moment, but also the pay bill forecasts in here are put in by the service managers based upon their establishment and based upon the current pay scales. So, no, it doesn't feature in these forecasts.
So, and again, not preempting what's a live discussion, and I understand that it's probably not easy to comment, but should that pay discussion get to where everyone's hoping it will get to, and we're all aware of the figures, will that impact this budget, or will that impact next year's budget, do we think? And if it does impact this year's budget, what steps have we got, what have we got in our back pocket to sort of ease that, shall we say?
Okay, so this has been addressed already because we've released I can look at you and talk at the same time. So we have released the Q1 forecast, budget forecast. They were discussed at overview and scrutiny last week. So in that we mentioned that we have put aside a reserve to cover the pay bill discussions for this year because it's arisen out of the windfall from receiving greater financial interest. So we have already put aside a pot of money to cover the discussions that we're having. Okay.
Are there any more?
Just looking at the sickness levels, I noticed that stress is still quite high. What are we doing about sort of trying to manage sort of stress levels?
We're seeing it's a lot of personal stress, but we are offering out, we have our mental health first aiders, our employee assistance program, and we look at stress risk assessments with anybody who has been off with a stress absence, offering support services at every opportunity we can.
Briefly, Chairman, I did wonder, may I ask, we talked about the number of people leaving, 1 in 7, and I know people that have actually left who were involved in this. You're able to recruit again? Have you able to replace them, or are we got less than we did have? Do you know? Have you had those figures?
Mental health first aiders, we do have less than we had, but we still have a good number of mental health first aiders within the organisation who we are continually training.
And I'm assuming that's across all departments that you've got them. That's very good. Has anybody else, has any of the reps got anything they'd like to ask on this part of the report?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points out of the workforce report. When the leavers, we noticed there were 5 for misconduct in this period, which is having looked back for the previous 10 quarters, that's more than that total, which is quite interesting. I don't know if we've got a new policy or we're doing something different, or it just happens they've fallen at that time. As the reps of the employees, we've not been approached by any of those employees for assistance, which is their right to do if they wish. We don't expect people to apply all the time. However, we need to ensure that we have the training in place to deal with these things in the future if there is a trend. We're seeing more in this area. The other issue was around the sickness, and stress and depression again is the highest level. Last quarter we put it down to it as that quarter. It normally is high in that quarter, but again, there's an increase there, and we need to make sure we have the systems in place to deal with this increase. We have a lot of good support, in the council to look after it, but it is increasing. So it is a worrying trend. We're having more staff off sick due to this reason. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Would you like to comment? Because I know I picked up on the 5 dismissals. It was quite high, wasn't it? Would you like to say something about that to the committee?
We have seen a higher than normal caseload, but it's not been any single pattern or trend. It's been across a variety of services and a variety of different issues. So it's not something we can mitigate for or plan to deal with. It's completely out of the blue and hopefully not to continue.
Okay, everybody, no more questions on that? Then shall we move on?
Well, I was just wondering, you've asked for some more information. To summarise that, so it's information on pay grades, leavers, sickness, and sickness links to health and safety.
Yeah.
Does that capture everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bench, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so shall we move on to item number 4, workforce profile and action plan? That's you, Keir, isn't it?
Thank you. So at the last committee, a report was shared with an annual summary of the profile of the workforce at HDC as at 31st March 2023 by their protected characteristics as defined under the Equality Act. It was agreed that we would analyse the information against the census data, which will help us to evaluate how representative our figures are and help draw up an action plan for this committee for areas for improvement. So the report I provided you with goes through each of the protected characteristics, comparing against the census data, outlining where we can improve. Where we appear to be reflective of the census data, we have still identified actions as there's always room for improvement. I'll go through a summary of some of the findings for the bigger categories, but full details on all the characteristics are included in the report, including things that we are doing well. So in terms of gender, the split appears to be fairly reflective of the census data and the local demographic. However, we still identified that more work can be done around some of our pledges, especially menopause. We've already updated our adverts and internet with the pledges and will look to create menopause champions to lead this area of work. With disability, the data shows that HDC figures are reflective of the local population in terms of those that have declared a disability and are employed. Actions in relation to this are work in relation to the adjustments passport. So that was introduced in the disability at work policy that was reviewed at the last committee. So this work is in progress and that is being received well by employees and managers. We will ensure that the new disability at work policy is incorporated into existing processes for managing sickness to ensure employees are given a copy of the policy at sickness meetings. We will also review our sickness forms to enable reasonable adjustments to be part of the discussion and documented. We have already updated, so after I submitted this report, we've already updated our websites with the Disability Confident Pledge and have included this in recruitment adverts. We will explore with IT a dyslexia-friendly font standard so that all emails can be in the correct size, justified appropriately and using the correct font. And we will also look at signing up to the Mindful Employer Charter. So this charter is about taking a positive approach to mental health at work. And obviously we know we do a lot around that at the moment anyway, so I think it would be useful to explore that. One of the other things I was going to highlight that isn't in the report is we're actually looking at securing dates to put on mental health awareness training for our managers before the end of the year. And that's with one of the counselling providers that we work with. For the sexual orientation category, there is limited data on this internally and externally to compare, and therefore work needs to be done on the declaration rate, specifically in relation to education on what the categories mean. And we know this through some of the queries that we got when we'd gone out to staff to ask them to complete it, where they were saying that they're not sure which one to mark. So we will do some work around that. In relation to ethnicity, we don't have data for all our employees, so it shows that 19.2% declare. Therefore, direct comparisons with the census data cannot be made. So, as well as increasing our declaration rate in this area, we will also look at breaking down the categories such as white into white other to give a better comparison in line with that census data. We will explore the Race at Work Charter and Unison Anti-Racism Charter to see which actions can be implemented at HDC. And we will also feed into the workforce strategy so that we can get views from staff on how culture and cultural celebrations could be celebrated, education can be shared around these areas. On the last page, I've included some general actions that will apply to all. So one of the big overarching ones is in relation to increasing the declaration rate. So you'll be aware from previous committees, we've done a lot of work already and we have managed to increase those numbers, but we need to do some more targeted work through managers and directly to individuals to get those rates up even higher. We'll be reviewing our training on equal opportunities and the policy. We will have HR involvement in quality meetings with other councils to share best practice. With recruitment, we'll be focusing on transferable skills to allow more people to apply rather than being prescriptive. In addition, asking for equivalent experience rather than the focus being solely on the qualifications. We'll look at different employee networks as well for different groups to support and develop each other so that these can feed into HR policies, communications, learning and development, and equality actions. And we see like more actions evolving from some of those networks. We'll also look to review the bullying and harassment and grievance policy to make it easier for employees when raising concerns. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. And it is good because obviously all this data helps to feed in to the previous report and the graphs and the percentages of who's off sick and that. So it's very good. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. Well done. I really enjoyed reading this. It's always good to sort of understand what's going on in the organisation. You might have already stated this, and I just was double checking. Do we already have employee resource groups or employee network groups active in the organisation? There's a second question, but if you want to.
Just talking to Nikki because I believe we've got some Teams channels, but it needs to be a lot more work done around actually creating some of these network groups. So there's possibly people who would like to be involved in this piece of work, but it's about formalising some of that.
I ask, it's something I've been involved in just recently myself where I work, and I know I don't underestimate the challenges of getting it going, but where we have started getting it going, we're already seeing benefits. I would just encourage the council if we could, and I know it's got to come from the ground up, but I know you guys will play an important role in making that happen. My second point was related to recruitment, and again, I don't know if you talked about some of the things you're going to do around recruitment. Have we initiated any sort of unconscious bias training and things like that for our recruiting managers? Again, I think it's well worth it, having gone through it myself and having seen it work well in other organisations.
So we have got unconscious bias training available. One of my plans with that is to specifically put it out there as a kind of a highlight for one of the months so that it kind of highlights it to managers that this is something we want you to make sure you've completed.
So I've now lost what I was going to say. No, yeah. You're going to. Could I suggest that perhaps it may become a mandatory piece of training if you're going to be a part of the recruiting process? It's got to be mandatory. Don't let people recruit if they haven't at least completed some of those basic pieces of training. And my final request, Chair, if you'll indulge me, I love all the actions. Could we have that in one table, perhaps, that we could, as a committee, come back and look at and get updates on? I just would find it easier than having to jump about it. But I love what you've done, so well done. Thank you.
I just wanted to echo that. I think it's an excellent report. I'm so pleased that we're thinking about these issues and putting programs in place and so forth. I think it's really encouraging and may it long continue. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to support Councillor Corley's recommendations there. I think it's a really good suggestion, particularly on the unconscious bias suggestions. I think are really good. I seem to remember last year that we gained some awards, you know, in the area of equality. Nikki, you probably remember better than that. I just wondered whether we'd received anything, because I know that HDC has been highlighted as in the top echelons in some areas around equality, I think.
That was within our gender pay gap reporting. In previous years, we came in some of the higher stats. So we've got that covered, and we're also accredited with Disability Confident and Menopause Pledge, some of the other things we're doing.
So excellent steps forward, I think. So great report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. ERG, have you got anything? Reps, have you got anything you want to say? No? I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, just to sorry. Yeah, just to thank the Human Resources team for pulling such a good report together and actually using the data to drive change, you know, within the organisation. So thank you.
Okay, so if we move on to the next item, which is item 5, new policy fixed term contract.
Thank you. So alongside our work within the team looking at refreshing our policies, but also identifying any gaps where we may have policies that we should have and don't. So this time we are bringing the fixed term contract policy to you for endorsement. It is a policy that ensures that we are treating our fixed term workers in the correct manner and following the legal position. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I think this is very easy to read, which is always very helpful, obviously, if people are going to be signing forms that they want to know what they're signing. So I thought it was very good to read and everything. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Crawley.
Not a question. I totally agree with you, Chair. It's a good policy, but just want the pedant in me has come out. This has been approved by the employment panel, not the employee panel. Dare I suggest typo?
Thank you for that, pointing that. So as a committee, we've been asked to consider and endorse this new policy. So everybody happy to do that? Yes? Okay.
Thank you. Continuing with policies, this is the updated policy we've done in this quarter. We've reviewed 2 policies. One is the job evaluation policy and the other is the working time regulations guidelines. The job evaluation policy, we have changed this from a procedure to a policy, and we have updated it in line with our new templates. Just to note, in 5.2 of the appendix, we have had communication with the union around the wording where we should accept external unions, not just internal. So that will be amended. And then the working time regulations guidelines has been reviewed and streamlined to make clearer for everybody to use. So again, we would ask you to consider and endorse the updated policies.
Councillor Crawley.
Sorry, same comment. One of your policies, you've got employment, which is great. The other one, you got employee. So we could just make sure. Small point.
So as a committee, we're asked to consider and endorse this new policy. Is everybody happy to do that? Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then we go on to item 7, which was representatives of the employees. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the main concern among the employees at the moment is the pay update and dispute. A survey has gone out to all staff now, but at the same time, Unison have issued a notice of industrial action, and there's obviously concern amongst staff about what is going on. We obviously try to allay those fears and answer the questions as we're receiving them. There are an awful lot. One of the main concerns, as has already been raised, is other councils are still receiving more. We understand, have been to the meetings since August last year, dealing with this year's pay award. There are obviously financial restrictions on what the council is able to do at the moment, but the consolidated pay that is rising in other councils is continuing to leave Huntingdonshire behind, and it is a worry for people, and we are losing good staff as a result.
Obviously, we are not going to, as it's an ongoing situation, discuss the pay negotiations. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything, but it's not appropriate to bring it to this meeting, and so it'd be no comment on that. And obviously, we note your concerns. Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say if staff have any questions, just make certain they go back to HR. As I think you're very much aware of, the discussions are ongoing, so I don't want to prejudice those discussions right here, right now. But I think my understanding is there's a lot of information going out to staff in terms of how best. So the survey is literally asking staff of how they want to receive this lump sum that has been allocated, and some people want consolidated, other people prefer non-consolidated. It's up to staff, but I think staff need to understand exactly what it is that they're being consulted on and engaged about with, and so if there are concerns or any questions, then please get them to put their hands up.
Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring to the...
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
If there's no other business, then I will close the meeting. Thank you very much for all attending. Okay, I just wanted to say before we do leave, if there